This time at the Quick Speed Shop, it's more banger fun. From last time I got the head mounted and all that on here. I went and painted the head, and like I said before in the other video, I'm leaving the water pump unrestored for now because there was some crust in the coolant passages, and I want to try to run some water through it without doing that in case it chunks anything up. I want to wait, but I've got the whole block painted. I just chunked the plugs in here. These two plugs, this thing was weird. It had two brand new plugs and two rusty junk plugs in it. So I've got to order two more plugs for the rear of the head. But I've gone and I've got the timing ready to set. I had it almost set on top dead center, and I'll show you how you do it here. This pin that's in the front of the timing cover comes out, and then you flip it around and you stick it in here, and there's a hole in the timing gear on the cam, which this goes in here for exact top dead center. And I can see the hole, it's real close, but the distributor only fits one way here. I've just got it set in here, and there's the distributor hole and then a pinhole location here, so you can't really mess with the distributor like a pulled out and advance it around because it's just got a straight drive and the gear is down in here. I've also got the exhaust studs and intake studs cleaned up, and I've got the intake painted. I've put the oil drain back tube on. I've added the throttle linkage back here. Unfortunately, I noticed the throttle spring is broke, so this wants to stay up here, and I think this is your only means of throttle spring return action. And I have another one, but it's a little bit different shape than this one over here that was on it, and the action's a little bit different. This has got a good spring, but the action over here is a little bit different, and the throttle itself is in a different spot, so I don't know. One of these has got to be a 3031, and this, I think this one's a 2829, and the other one is a 3031. Actually, there's a part number on here. I could run the part number and figure it out, but I think this is the one that I want, the 3031 style, so I'll have to figure out what to do with the spring. I might just put a little return spring on here just to the firewall. I mean, we're not doing a restored car here, so it doesn't really matter. So I've been working on that. Got all the hardware cleaned up. I got a bunch of things painted. I painted the starter. I painted the rest of the hardware. So I think what we'll do now is we'll button down this distributor, get this tied down, and then, oh, the phone's ringing. I'll be right back. So you just take your timing pin, you stick it in here when it goes in flush all the way. So I went just a hair far, so I'm going to go back just a little bit. Just a little bit. That, yeah, that's lined right up now. Now the pin goes in here. So that's right at top dead center. And I had put a little mark on a pulley. I just kind of guessed by having the piston up, but it wasn't exact. So this is top dead center by using the timing mark. Alright, so here's what I got to do. This is number one here, and the contact for it is here, and the rotor is over here, so it's not pointing at it. The rotor wants to be pointing over here. So the way to adjust this, because you can't do anything with the distributor body, is got the book here. You take out the distributor body. Here's number one. You see me? Yeah. Here's number one. So I gotta take and get in here in the distributor. You see it? Here, I gotta loosen up this screw with a screwdriver. Then I can turn the cam. The rotor's on, and we'll set this at top. We'll set this looking at number one, which is right here. So I can pull the rotor out and loosen up the screw in the top of this. You can see it. Oh, it's already loose anyways. And loosen that up. I can put the rotor back in. I should be able to turn. Aha! Turn this guy. You see me turn it? right here, so it's looking right at number 1, which is right here. So now I've got my timing pin in. My timing pin in is located top dead center. I've cranked the rotor over to look at number 1, which is right here. So I'm going to pull the rotor back out, tighten the screw back down. Put the rotor back on and verify. Bam. So now it's looking over here. It's looking at number 1. So here's our timing pin down here, still pushed into the cam spot. And here's our distributor set to number 1. So when I put the strap on here, this strap, number 1 here, goes to number 1 plug. This one goes to number 2. This one to 3, and this one to 4. And I believe the firing order is 1, 4, 3, 2, I think is how it fires. So that's set for rough timing. Now there's another step. If I had the ignition wired up, you take this and you turn with a test light and you open and close the what do you call it, the points, and you can just fine tune it with a test light to set your timing. I can't do that right now because obviously there's no wiring hooked up. And then when your rod comes from the distributor, from the steering column over here, this is how you advance and retard the timing from the steering column by using the left lever. Here we'll run this and advances and retards the timing. When you use this alarm, can you see my hand? No, but I'm moving the rod up here. Trust me, I'm moving the rod up on the column. You can't see it right now. But the rod will come over here, which is actually this one. So when I paint this up, this goes down here to the steering column and hooks up to the distributor like so. And when I advance, you pull it one way and pull it the other way, it advances and retards the timing by moving the plate. But I feel good now. I got this set up. Like I said, with the timing pin at top dead center, I'm looking at number 1 right in the center on the distributor. I'm looking right at number 1 at the center of the distributor here. So that's good base timing to get this thing dialed in. So I'm going to go ahead and put the pin back in the regular way in the block just by turning it around, and threads right back in here, back into the timing cover. I'll tighten that down with my wrench, which is missing. It's not this wrench. Yes, it is this wrench. So I'll just tighten this back down like that. That's all done. So I've got my distributor. I went and there's a set screw here. I've tightened that down so the distributor body's locked down. I can go ahead and just put my cap on here to keep this going, but we're dialed in now. And let's move on to the intake and exhaust. All right, here we go with the exhaust system and the intake manifold. So we got here is the intake and exhaust. The green one's the intake and the cast iron one's the exhaust. Now this manifold, I'll show you in a minute, has this heat-a-liter on top, but let me go ahead and slide this on these studs. Like so, don't drop it. Let's stay right there. Okay. Gotta get the nuts. The nuts and washers. This has some Shares washers. I got these big fat washers here that go over both things, and I got some fine thread nuts. Let's thread onto the studs. Now I didn't paint this exhaust manifold because I don't have any exhaust paint, and any other paint will just burn off it, so I'm just leaving it rustic, because it'll end up getting rustic anyways on its own. But it had the nice copper intake and exhaust. This gasket kit I use is an older gasket kit, nice high quality of all the copper gaskets. It's real nice. A lot of the new ones just come with paper, and this one ought to work really good. On my Model A, my AA tow truck, I had the copper gaskets. I had the paper gaskets, and the exhaust manifold was just a little, had an imperfection on the back, and it kept blowing the paper gasket out. And probably if I had this copper set on there, it wouldn't happen like that. So let me just explain a minute here what's going on. So this is not the exhaust that was on the Doodlebug when I got it. This one is, and there's probably, there you can see the mouse nest is still in the exhaust. They kind of got in there, and see all this rust on the back side? See here, the mouse nest, or the mouse P kind of rotted this around here, and the casting's super thin on this, super thin on the exhaust manifolds, and I was afraid it was going to leak. So this other one, this helilator one's a lot thicker. This is a stock Ford piece. This is aftermarket back in the day. So I'll show you when I have the cowl put on. This helilator, they would have had a sheet metal or cast iron cover that would have sucked air from the fan through this helilator, and then there's a hole that's drilled in the firewall where the hot air would blow into the car, and you would open a little flap and let the hot air in. That was your heater, because Model A's didn't have heaters unless you did it this way. So the stock exhaust is here, and the helilator exhaust is there. The intakes are the same. I just painted this one up because it came with that setup. So I'm going to run this exhaust on this thing. And I also want to talk about the carburetor real fast. This unit here is an aluminum Tillerson carburetor, and the other option for Ford was the cast iron Zenith carburetor, which I like to run. I bought this one at Hershey, Pennsylvania, and I've had good luck with the one on my tow truck. I think this one's either been rebuilt or it's been it was a good run and takeoff. I think the guy, yeah, it's been had all new parts in it, and the guy was a Model A guy, and he does restorations, and the customer wanted a brand new carburetor for a full restoration. So this is a good running unit that I bought down there. I'm going to slap this on, and we'll have the cast iron Zenith carburetor compared to the aluminum Tillerson. I like Model A's. They're simple and easy to work on. Well, this hole here, this is a hold on, let me zoom in for the action. Zoom in for the action. Aha! Oop. Where a ratcheting wrench should come in handy. Bam! So we got our Zenith carburetor mounted up here. This hole right here is a vacuum port, so if you wanted to run vacuum wipers on your Model A, if you didn't have standard, they just came with one mechanical wiper that bolted to the windshield frame with a arm just to swing it by hand. But if you had vacuum operated wipers, you got a vacuum port here. You run a little copper line up to the dash rail, and up above the windshield they would have had a vacuum wiper motor and a switch to turn it on and off. You got your throttle here, which hooks onto the throttle linkage here, and this is your choke rod, which pulls. The choke is open right now. Pulls up to close the choke, opens it. You can see that there, and also this rod turns like this, and it adjusts the idle mixture, richens it, and leans it out like that. So this gets a choke rod through the firewall. But this should be a good running carburetor. I've got the linkage. I got to paint it, put it on here. But here's the side of your engine, all complete, ready to go. So this side of the engine is pretty much complete with your intake, exhaust, carburetor, oil drain back tube. We set the timing with the pin, set the timing on the distributor. Got a brand new rebuilt distributor. Let's go to the other side. We'll put the starter in. Right, here is the starter motor painted up. Oh, I ran the paint on top too, dang it. But here's our starter motor. Where are you? Here's our starter motor. Got a foot operated Bendix operated switch to fire the thing off. It just loads right in the side of the block here. If I gotta pull the dipstick out, snake her up through. Hopefully this will fit. It should fit. Look at that. Bam. Oop. There we go. Let's get the bolts going. I'm going to fight with this. I'll bolt it in. We'll be right back. All right, there we go. I've got the starter bolted all in now here. Here's where the starter switch is. A foot plunger screws into this, but I can't put that onto the cowls ready. But I wanted to show you this here. This is the engine pad where the serial number for the engine. And if this was the original engine to this chassis, it would have a number here that matches the chassis number. But this engine was rebuilt at one time. It's 45,000 over, and they machined the serial number off the block, meaning that this engine was rebuilt and then put in a different vehicle from what it came out of. And that's what they used to do back in the day when they'd rebuild them. And you would get them with the machine numbers, the serial numbers machined off, and you'd want to stamp your number in it to make it match your vehicle. So you always had the matching number to the chassis and the engine would match. So at some point, this engine was rebuilt and taken out of another vehicle, and now it's got no number here. So I could stamp it to match its chassis, but for the Doodlebug, it doesn't matter. But that's why there's no serial number on this pad here. But the next step is the ignition cable. Get over here. So with a Model A, with your foot starter, and this is your cable for your ignition, all you would have had to do to steal one of these was, if you didn't have the key on the inside, was if this cable, this is called an armored cable, it's got the spring on it, heavy duty coil spring. If this was just a regular wire, to fire this engine off, all you'd have to do is cut the wire and touch it down here to the battery terminal, and you would have power to ignition. Then you could hit the start and you could start the vehicle and drive away. So in order to combat that, they made what they call a pop-out ignition switch, which part of that system included this armored cable, and it threads into the distributor body here, and the armored cable ran up into the car, so you couldn't cut it to get the ignition going. So I'm going to install this cable now. I went and I've cut the spring off the end of it, and actually I had a shorted spot on the wire here, so the wire is short, and I'm just going to put regular wire up inside the cowl, but the armored part should reach to the firewall, so it'll look stock. I'm just going to go ahead and thread that right into the body here, and I also used an ohm meter. I tested from the contact end here, which is spring loaded, to the other end of my wire to make sure I had continuity. Then I checked to the spring to make sure the wire wasn't shorted out, and I had no continuity to the spring, meaning that the insulation is good on the wire, so the wire is good inside this cable. Alright, so I've installed the pop-out cable clamp. This will go up into the terminal block on the firewall. So the engine is pretty much buttoned up. I've got to put oil in it. I've got to paint the cowl over here. I'm just going to paint it like an olive green. I have a can of olive green paint. So I'm going, is it olive green? It's a hunter green or something. Anyway, some kind of green. I'm just going to paint the cowl, sand it up and paint it. I'm going to green for this, I guess. And then I can set the cowl back here on the chassis, and then we can start hooking all this stuff up. I can rewire the cowl. I think I have new ignition wires and all that. I got to get some new plugs, but I can wire this all up. We can clean the sediment bowl out on the tank and make sure the tank's going to function. Get the fuel line hooked up. Get all the linkages hooked up here. I want to get some kind of head pipe because these things are extremely loud with no exhaust on them. And on this side, the exhaust dumps down right at the carburetor. I don't want it backfiring, or I don't want the carburetor puking gas out and have it backfiring out the exhaust at the same time and making a fireball. So I'm going to find some kind of head pipe to put on here and get the exhaust down away from the carburetor. And I'm going to run some water through the engine to flush out the coolant, because this engine had the mouse nest in the head and some of it got in the block, so I was able to suck most of it out, but there's some scale in the block. So I want to flush water through the water neck here and out the other water neck that side. Try to get all the scale out of the block, and then probably just fire it up dry because I don't have the radiator on it yet. Probably just fire the engine up dry and get the pop and bang and make noise, and then I'll hook the coolant system up on it. But making some good progress. It looks really good. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I'm going to put a circle. Where am I going to put it? Over here. Bing! Hit it over there on the cowl. Putting out new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. So don't forget to tell your friends. Like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again at the Quick Speed Shop.